All right, well, I'd like to go ahead and welcome everybody to our SMARTE webinar, which is titled Tools and Resources for Owner-Operators for this session. I'd like to start out by introducing our staff with the North Central Texas Council of Governments. My name is Trey Pope. I'm one of the planners. We also have Anthony Maffa, who's a planner as well. We have Jason Brown, who's a principal air quality planner. We have Juan Barra Luna, who's an air quality planner. We have as well Valerie Alvarado, she's our intern, and each one of our staff will be performing different functions to help this webinar flow as smoothly as possible. Today, I'll be the facilitator and moderator of this webinar. Next slide, please. All right, so during this webinar, we'll have two presentations. The first will be from Trucker Path. The other will be from Go Green Communications. And then we'll have a Q&A session and local updates at the end. Next slide, please. All right, so I'd like to talk briefly about the Saving Money and Reducing Truck Emissions program. You'll see that we have SMARTE with an E at the end. This program is an initiative which is designed to integrate the trucking industry with cost-efficient and emission-reducing technologies and strategies. Now, the objective of this is to facilitate truck drivers, owner-operators, and fleet managers in achieving their sustainability goals economically. The approach of this program is centered upon fostering relationships with industry stakeholders and local governments, providing information and resources, as well as promoting the use of smartly verified technology products. We have our first presenter today. His name is Chris Oliver with Trucker Path. He's the Chief Marketing Officer at that company, a provider of a wide range of truck driver-centric mobility products, which includes the Trucker Path app used by approximately 1 million commercial truck drivers. And now we'll ask Chris to share with us how the Trucker Path app, North America's most used real-time truck mapping and navigation tool for truck drivers, gets truckers from the origin to the destination efficiently and safety, and increasing their productivity and quality of life. Chris?
Gotcha. Thanks, Trey. I appreciate it. And thanks for inviting me again. I enjoy participating on these webinars with you guys. You can go ahead and hit the next slide. Real quick, an introduction to Trucker Path and who we are in case you're not familiar. Most people think of Trucker Path as if you took Waze and Yelp and they got together and had a baby, it would be Trucker Path. On the Waze side of things, we have truck-specific navigation that takes into account the dimensions of the truck before routing is created. And then on the Yelp side, we've got hundreds of thousands of POIs, points of interest, throughout the app, most of which were cultivated through suggestions from the truck driver community, suggesting, a restaurant they like or a truck stop they like, a hotel, whatever it may be. And once those are posted to the app, they're able to do ratings and reviews to share with other drivers so that the community itself can help each other out during their trips throughout the day, week, whatever the case may be. And so we have just under 1 million active users this month. Last month, apologize. That's not downloads, that's actual people using the app. We have a very engaged community. That's, about 30% of the long haul drivers in the country are regular users of Trucker Path. Of those million, excuse me, about 400,000 of those use the app daily. So very, very large community that's very engaged and shares a lot of information with us and the community as a whole to help make life better for drivers while on the road. Go ahead, you can hit the next slide. The way we think about the offerings we put together at Trucker Path, essentially follow Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You can never remember if it's called a pyramid or a triangle, but I think everybody has seen this before. Our base and most required need is always safety. I've been in the industry for a long time and almost always involved with safety directly to some degree. And that's just paramount. Big trucks moving heavy things, you need to be safe and make sure we're doing things properly. Next up is earnings. That's why people are in business to earn money most of the time. And then productivity is next, which is really just perfecting or improving upon those earnings. And then last but not least, convenience or comfort. The way we kind of look at things is everything ticks one of these boxes. It just depends on where they fit in the scale. You go ahead and hit the next one. So at that base level of safety, you could also add safety and compliance, I guess, to this. Both are absolutely essential throughout the industry. But there are a lot of ways that drivers, whether they're owner operators or drivers in general, can approach safety. I listed a few of the things here. Obviously, on the compliance side, also born because of safety or ELDs. Fatigue drivers are, they're tired. It's tough to do. It's tough to drive a truck to begin with, but when you get long into the day and lots of hours, the fatigue sets in and it gets more difficult. And difficulty and tiredness and fatigue driving a truck. That doesn't go well from a safety side. So ELDs, and I know they were adopted kind of painfully, I guess you could say, or reluctantly initially, but we're several years into that now. And, I think for most it's been accepted and it's fine. But there's no question that, keeping track of the hours that are driven is something that helps with safety. There's also maintenance. There's a lot of moving parts in a truck, and it's very important to keep track and make sure that they're operating as they're supposed to, or as close to the way they're supposed to as possible. Here at Trucker Path, we offer our command platform that is a truck transportation management system for small fleets. One of the features that we included that, of course, is maintenance notifications and tracking, so we can keep track of when oil changes and tire rotations. And, all the varying degree, all the various preventive maintenance measures are due on a truck, so that make sure that the equipment being utilized is safe and as close to tip-top condition as possible. And I mentioned earlier navigation. I think we've all seen videos of a truck driving under a bridge that it didn't fit and it peels the top off like a can opener. That's probably the most dramatic and probably the most watched example of trucks being navigated like they're cars. But there are also, road limits, bridge weight limits, simple turns that can't be made with the tractor trailer. All those are really important from a safety perspective, and they're also contribute significantly to productivity as well, which we'll talk about later. But the way we approach that is rather unique. We start off several years ago with a base layer of navigation capabilities just based upon truck dimensions, so truck height, weight. We drive the users into that information, and then we make sure that we don't route them under bridges that aren't tall enough to accommodate their equipment, overweight on roads, etc. And that base layer has served us well. But what we do that I think is special is everything we serve, the drivers have the ability to tell us if we're wrong. And we're not perfect, we're not right all the time. But what we do is we continually hone our data. If, for example, we've routed a driver and there's a left turn we've suggested they take and they can't make that turn because it's too tight or because it's onto a one-way road or a truck restricted road, they're able to push a button within the app and tell us that. So we've got 1 million drivers doing that all the time and helping to perfect us. So now here we are about 5 years into our implementation of our truck navigation. And the way I look at it is about 80% of it is pretty similar to other truck navigation. You put in your dimensions and do the best you can to keep that in account. But about 20% of our navigation data that we have is really built from real world experience from the drivers that use Trucker Path, which makes it, in my opinion, a little bit more robust than most, and then, of course, a little bit safer and more productive. And lastly, great technology, telematics. Most people think of telematics just for big fleets to keep track of where their trucks are and how they're operating so they can manage drivers. But the truth is that's really like having a digital co-pilot in a truck. A good, robust telematics system can not only keep track of where you are and how fast you're going and your fuel consumption rate, but also really monitor all the various CPUs that are on the truck and make sure that everything is operating healthily. And if it's not, it'll let you know what the problem is. So you're a little bit more tuned into what your truck is doing than not if you're using a good telematics provider. And that data is key to avoiding breakdowns. And when they do break down, making sure that they're diagnosed properly and you're back on the road as quickly as possible. So that's another great option. So lots of different things you can do with safety. These are just a few I thought I would highlight. You can go to the next slide. Earnings, the next level. We're in business. We're all in business to get paid, and so are the drivers. And lots of things here. The first step in that process is finding loads. Doesn't matter how smart you are, how good of a driver you are, how beautiful your truck is, how much fuel's in it. If you don't have a load to move, it doesn't matter. Lots of ways that can be done. Some work directly with brokerages. Some utilize load boards. Some utilize digital freight matching, lots of different ways for drivers to secure loads, but that's a major, major part. Here at Trucker Path, we've got our truckloads load board. We post, nearly 1 million loads a month there on that. It's free for drivers to use. They can do, I believe it's up to 5 searches a day for loads for them to work. So lots of opportunity there. And then, of course, there are many other load boards available that can be subscribed to that offer even more searches. So getting the loads is something that technology helps a lot with, and here, as do we here at Trucker Path. Another level is the analytics. It wasn't too long ago when $4 a mile was not uncommon for drivers. That was unbelievably high earnings per mile, and it was really, really good for the industry, especially for owner operators while it lasted. And it didn't last forever, though. It seemed as though as big and fast as it popped up, it went away. And that was what, 21, it really, really started to fall off. And even today, the spot market itself is dipped. So having analytics to help understand what's in the market, what markets are hot, which markets aren't. There's lots of sources available for those types of analytics, but it's really important to understand for a driver as they're planning out their day or week. It may look great to drive from, say, Phoenix up into Montana because you'll make $3.50 a mile to get up there. The problem is then you got to get out, and there's not a lot of demand of freight to be coming out. So what looked like a great drive up to Montana, you could lose money on coming back, and the trip as a whole could become negative. So understanding the analytics and how the market's working is essential. Fuel is the biggest variable expense. There are lots of discount networks available to find the cheapest fuel prices, or at least get discounts on those fuel prices. That's where Trucker Path was born, was really to show truck stops and where drivers could buy fuel. Not too long ago, we opened up our fuel discount network. Last month, drivers saved an average of 20 cents a gallon with us. And it's as easy as just using the app that they already utilize to find the fuel and find the truck stops to begin with. Now they can use it to get discounts as well. And then lastly is insurance. That's a major cost. I had a meeting not too long ago with an insurance provider who was telling me that in today's environment, a driver who's been driving for less than 2 years is paying somewhere in the neighborhood of $25,000 a year in a premium. That's a hefty charge. $2,000 a month is a big expense to anybody. And to an owner operator, that's big. In the not too distant past, there have been alternatives in popping up where drivers can pay per mile, they can pay per day, per use. New options are coming around all the time that make it a little bit easier for owner operators to be able to get their insurance and then also pay for it when they use it, not all the time, and save a little bit of money. So all these come together to drive good earnings and make sure the business is healthy. Go ahead and do the next one. Next layer is productivity. Like I said earlier, once you're safe, sound, and compliant, then you start to earn money, and then the question becomes, how do I earn money better? That's what productivity is. I've touched on a few of these already. Routing, I talked about earlier about the safety aspect of routing, but there's a serious productivity element. If by chance you do drive and you come to a road where there's a bridge that you can't go under, that's unfortunate. You can't go under it, so then you got to turn around, and turning around a tractor trailer on especially on a 2 or 1 lane road with the bridge, very difficult. So you're going to lose time. With loss of time is lost revenue. So the routing becomes really important again. Another item that we really pride ourselves on here at Trucker Path is parking availability. Wasn't too long ago, I participated with you all on a webinar like this about parking for trucks throughout the country. And it's a big problem. And, it was big as an understatement. Atri, who presented with me last time, shared that it was like 45 minutes, if not a little bit longer on average, for a driver to find a parking space each day. That's a lot of wasted time when you only have so many hours a day to drive. So being able to find good available parking is essential. And at a Trucker Path, we've identified and geofenced about 20,000 locations where drivers can park safely and legally. And because they're geofenced, anytime somebody breaks that geofence, we ask them, say, hey, could you look around and let your community know, are there no spaces available here? Are there some spaces available here? Are there many spaces available here? It doesn't seem like really great data, but when you have 1 million people chiming in and providing that data on a regular basis, it becomes real actionable. And as you can see on the slide here, what the driver sees, the example here we have is Valley Truck Stop. You can see that it shows that there was many spots available, and it tells you how long ago that report was given. So as you're rolling up, you'll say, oh, geez, 2 minutes ago, somebody said there are a lot of spots available here. That's a big time saver. You know, you can go there and find a spot versus having to drive around and find another. So massive productivity increase. Way stations can be a time suck. You know, they're essential. We need them. They help us, all of us, both truckers and non-truckers on the roadways with safety. But they do take time. So we keep track and let our drivers know when they're open and closed and about how long it's taking for their fellow drivers to get through the queue and get through the way station. So they can be prepared for that and know how it's going to impact their trip for that morning or afternoon. And lastly is the docks themselves. You know, most navigation platforms will navigate you to the front door of any address you put in. That's great for most of us driving cars, but if you're driving a big truck for a delivery, that's not where you want to go. So over the years, we've been watching where the trucks actually go, and we map specifically where the drivers enter, where the trucks enter and exit those facilities. They're also geofenced. That's how we measure not only the entrance and exit, but also the time that's spent there. So every day we're adding hundreds of new docks to our platform so that drivers, when they see their destination, first they navigated where they need to go, which saves time. And they also know roughly how long it's been for the previous drivers who were visiting there, how long they were there. So all these come together to really help the driver be prepared for their day and their trip and make sure they do it as efficiently as possible. Okay, you can go to the next one. And lastly, convenience, the cool stuff, right? I talked earlier about our POIs, and we've got hundreds of thousands of those. Most of those are the recommendations of the drivers themselves, and they love to rate them and they love to review them. So this particular example we have has a 3.8 rating. You know, I think we're all familiar with star ratings on a 1 to 5 scale at this point. And then we have lots of reviews on most places, and these reviews are from other truckers. So it's really nice for a driver to be able to see not only the general rating, but then reviews from the brotherhood. You know, what do they think about this place from a driver's perspective? I don't know about you guys, but whenever I'm looking for a place to eat dinner, when on Yelp, for example, and I find it and I see 5-star ratings, I always go, oh, well, that's neat. And then I wonder, well, wait a minute. This is supposed to be a steakhouse. Were these 5-star ratings people that just love, you know, Sonic hamburgers, or are these people who are connoisseurs of steak? Because different ratings, different things. But in the trucker path world, these are truckers talking to truckers. So, you know, you're kind of on the same page most of the time. We also offer business services within our marketplace. Today, it's got a wide range of insurances the drivers need, mostly health, life insurance, dental, eye, the non-trucker insurance, non-trucker commercial insurance. So that's coming soon. And then also business services. We're in partnership with our friends at a company called ATBS. They provide tax and accounting services specifically for owner-operators, for example. So that's, you know, I don't know about you guys. I'm not a tax expert. I'm pretty tax averse. I prefer not to have to mess with it. I use the service. And we like to offer that to truckers as well. You know, they're not accountants either most of the time. So that really helps their business takes the hassle out of running their business. And they're also usually able to help find some efficiencies and some tax reductions. And then something that's come very, very new to our offering is, it hasn't even officially launched yet. It's coming in about a week. Is through the Trucker Path app, we're going to be offering SiriusXM subscriptions at a significant discount to say thank you to the drivers. So, you know, you're driving from state to state, city to city, listening to terrestrial radio is real tough because you got to change the stations all the time. SiriusXM is ubiquitous across the country. So whether it's listening to The Bridge and the 70s singer-songwriters, current hip-hop, or just listening to Raw Dog Radio talk about trucking issues, Sirius works everywhere. So it's a great fit for drivers who, you know, are driving long trips, long distances. It just works throughout the entire trip for them. That's that top tier of Maslow's hierarchy that I talked about earlier. And at that point, we've covered a whole lot of it. That's really the crux of what I wanted to share today is really marching through that the hierarchy of needs and ways that owner operator could cover safety, compliance, earning, productivity, and then ultimately convenience and comfort. That's what I've got to say about that.
All right, great. Thanks so much, Chris, for sharing with us extensive navigation capabilities of Trucker Path and also the crucial role in guiding drivers. I'd like to say that the information on the other services that you provided on the app is helpful as well, and we appreciate your time and knowledge. So with that, Jason, do we have any questions in the chat for Chris?
I've been monitoring the chat. Don't see a question yet, and don't see any hand raised. We do have a question that came in previously, and so if you've got any insights, Chris, what new parking projects are underway in the Dallas-Fort Worth region outside of traditional truck stops?
Well, unfortunately, I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. We, when new parking locations become evident or become real, we geofence them and let the world know they're there and how much space is available. But actual projects that are taking place in the DFW area, unfortunately, I'm not very well versed in that. I'm sorry about that.
No worries. Thank you. That's the questions that we have at this point.
See one popped up.
I do see one there.
Okay. Chris, how will the Sirius subscriptions through the app work? Will operators listen within the Trucker Path app, or is it just to facilitate the discounted subscription?
It's the couple options. Yes, there are discounted subscriptions, and that can be utilized to run an existing radio that's either built in the truck or an aftermarket addition to the truck's entertainment stack, I guess you would call it. We also offer a streaming. We'll also be offering a streaming solution where they'll be able to stream whatever they want to listen to right through the app itself.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
All right, great. Thanks so much, Chris. All right, well, we'll go ahead and introduce our next speaker, Ron Zima, who's the CEO of Go Green Communications. We know that from having looked at Ron's business that he works across North America, based in Canada, and has outreach in Canada, the United States, and Mexico, all across the continent here. His company has delivered North America's auto-free behavioral research and practice in the transport industry's auto reduction, behavior modification coaching, certification, and branding solution for fleet operators. This presentation, Ron will explore the three universal values that drivers share relative to the impact of their unconscious idling behavior, and also share how to build a broader auto reduction culture by promoting these three values that results in the following: dramatic cost, carbon, and exhaust pollution reductions for fleet operators. Ron?
Great, thanks so much. Can you hear me? All right. Yes. So I'm really pleased to join you this afternoon. You know, this really began as an idle reduction campaign at my kids' elementary school. Next slide, Trey. But I've been around the block, as you might say. But three distinct careers have brought me to this point, including as a radio, television performer, broadcaster across Canada, a lot of experience in the US as well, sales and marketing expertise in high tech and telecom, and then cause branding with the likes of the Salvation Army, where I spent 6 years and had a blast. I'm a father of 2 kids, founder of a not-for-profit called the Children's Clean Air Network, which is a registered charity in Canada, and then the creator of Idle Free for Our Kids for Fleets. So, but this is based on, next slide, Trey. This is based on a campaign that started at an elementary school some 15 years ago, and on the East Coast of Canada. And what we discovered as we enlisted more and more car guys, businesses, enthusiastically, was that idling really was a big deal. And we could see it outside our kids' schools, which today really still are idling hot zones. And all you have to do is the next time you're driving truck by, you know, a school zone or what have you, in an area that has traffic, you're going to see a lot of idling. And so what we've discovered with this program along the way are the things that make us really pay attention to our idling behaviors, which unfortunately are still pretty much rooted in the 1960s. But you as a fleet operator with an expensive number of trucks to move as cost efficiently as possible, I mean, you will know that the cost of fuel is a huge part of your operating expense. And that if you take a look at your rate of idle in your operations, you're going to see what we've found with this paper, by the way, which is available on our website at goidlefree.com. But idle reduction from driver behavior in a fleet's gasoline and diesel burning assets is the biggest combined cost, greenhouse gas, and air pollution reduction opportunity for fleet operators in the US and Canada. That's all fleet industry sectors. Now, in the Class 8 trucking world, next slide, Trey, there's a number of operators in the US in particular, and a number of them in Canada that really are aware of the economics of idling. But a lot of operators aren't, and it is a huge cost. So if you take a look at this slide here, what we call the cascade of costs of driver 60s idling beliefs and behavior. And at the very top of the list is fuel, of course. So if you're running the power plant for the tractor trailer when it doesn't need to be on, that's generating fuel burn. It's as simple as that. So your operation is either on at the right time or it's not. And so fuel is right at the top of the list. Now, there's a whole list of cascading events that happen because the power plant has been left on, and that's added maintenance. And we know that within diesel technology today is super complicated with the after treatment systems and everything else, the diesel particulate filters. So when the engine is running when it shouldn't be, and it's not under load, it's not on the road moving forward or backing out somewhere, we know that that's the most expensive and the least cost-effective operation of the vehicle. And then right after that, you've got life cycle costs. So that really adds up over the course of several years. You've got vehicle downtime because of expensive DPF regens and what have you, leading to employee productivity. You've got carbon emissions, air quality. And with our program, which is unique and there's nothing else like it on the market, we actually win the buy-in of drivers with their hearts and minds with home engagement. I like to call it home engagement. So we really teach them about 21st century idle management best practices in their personal vehicles. So they save a lot of fuel at home, and it wins their hearts and minds about, wow, should I really be idling this engine, whether it's in the truck or it's in the vehicle at home? And then there's safety risk. I mean, a lot of times vehicles are left running and idling with nobody in them. That's a huge safety risk. And then fleet reputation. Next slide, Trey. So you can see there's a lot at stake here in terms of, hey, what's the payback for really getting to the hearts and minds of drivers? And we're specifically here, I'm referring to idling by choice by the driver. Not power takeoff, not stuck in traffic idle or induced idle, as we like to call it, but when parked and it makes sense. Are there times when your fleet operation, your truck could be doing that, as opposed to, hey, it's always running when I'm parked? Well, if you take a closer look at this, folks, you're going to see huge opportunity. Next slide, Trey. And of course, we've got more and more telematics, and there's an opportunity to really reduce a lot of costs. So I'd like to provide a plug here to one of our affiliates of our program, Longobart Ross Full Fleet Solutions, life cycle management experts and fleet optimization experts based in North Carolina. But as you can see on the left-hand side of this infographic, the fleet is, and we're using some really round numbers just to give you a sense here of the opportunity for reducing costs and carbon from driver 60s idling beliefs and behaviors. So the fleet is 100 vehicles with an idle burn rate of 1 US gallon per hour. And then you do the math from there. So 2 hours a day with a price of, let's just say, call it even at $4 a gallon for diesel, and then the costs. And then you can see that, the cost of ownership from running the power plant when it shouldn't be on is huge. So you add it all up, and the bottom line is there is a big cost saving opportunity. And the predictive outcomes, because quite simply, what we've discovered over 15 years of doing this, idle reduction, behavior modification, the behavioral science, basically most people are operating their vehicles as if they were built in the 1960s or the 70s, when there was a lot of idle time, and idle time made sense. But today, it doesn't make sense unless it's in extreme conditions where you do need that AC and what have you. But still, there's an opportunity to save a lot, and with a 50% reduction, a high outcome in our predictive outcomes, and that's typically what we can see. You will really reduce the cascade of costs from 60s idling, and that's that list on the right-hand side there. Next slide, Trey. Why do we idle so much? Again, and by the way, I'm an expert on this because I used to be the Canadian, American, same thing, idler. So nobody gave me the context about how to idle manage my vehicle. It was really just these memes, these myths handed down from grandpa in the 60s. Idling is good, restarts are bad, and long warm-ups are good. Well, not today. In fact, the next slide, Trey, you will find a very useful collection of advice from the original equipment manufacturers in this great collection put together by Oak Ridge National Labs, funded by the US Department of Energy. Now, this is dated 2016, but it is still very applicable today. In fact, it's probably even more relevant today. But what you'll find in here is just a list of all the OEMs like Chev, Ford, you name it. And they're all talking about what to do, best practices in terms of idling your vehicle in park. And typically, as you'll see here, now again, this is more skewed towards the personal vehicles at home, but that's crucial for us because you're really reaching the driver's hearts and minds at home. And then they really apply their idle reduction beliefs and behaviors for the 21st century behind the wheel of every vehicle they're in, including, the tractor trailer. So, but as it says here, Chevy, avoid idling, do not warm up the car. That's right out of the manual for the OEM. Ford, don't idle for more than 30 seconds. Well, that is not what you're going to see typically on our roads today. You're going to see, next slide, Trey. You're going to see a lot of people idling. Now, it's harder to see the idle because running lights are in park are generally, you don't see that today. So that doesn't tip you off that the vehicle is on and running. And it's harder to see the exhaust, the tailpipe emissions today, because absolutely so much has been cleaned up in the last 50 years. But there's a lot of idling going on. So what we do is we engage the drivers with the psychology that was really discovered in elementary schools back in 2006. But we've now proven with fleet managers that you can actually create and continuously maintain an idle reduction culture by speaking to these three values that most of us share to one degree or another. So, and those are our kids or people that are important to us. That could be, hey, I don't have kids at home right now, but I certainly do have a father who's dealing with a serious lung ailment that just can't stand idling exhaust, right? And that's not uncommon. So kids, their cars, their cash. How does my unconscious idling behavior from the 60s affect these three variables? And then when drivers are shown a direct cause and effect between their behavior and how it impacts these values, we get a significant change better than 80% of the time. So what really essentially drivers today are looking for is context and permission to, hey, get rid of those old 60s myths, those memes handed down from grandpa. No, that's not the way to operate the vehicle today. And there's a big opportunity here for cost savings and for further employee engagement. Now, interesting thing that happens along the way as we really win the hearts and minds of drivers, is that the employees, if they're not self-employed, thank management for the program. I had no idea. And most of us don't. But you know, folks who really love their automobiles and pamper them love our program. So car aficionados are some of our biggest fans. And but generally, you're going to find within your fleet operation that at least half of your drivers, based on our long experience, you're going to find that at least half of your driver audience are going to be early adopters. They're just ready for this message. But it's also the way the message is presented with the program online. Then you've got another big chunk of employees, participants who will come along and will be influenced by those early adopters. And it's like the 80-20 rule. Then you've got about 20% of drivers who will be behind the curve. Some of them will just, hey, I'm just meant to idle. I just can't change that belief, even though the OEMs have it right in a book, you know, in front of you. No, sorry, my belief is better operation with lots of idle. Next slide, Trey. Now, a key reason as to why, you know, it's a tough sell with employees is if employees sense that management isn't looking out for them, that's a problem. We all know that. That's a problem. So if the company is really about the company and not about the employee, or not about the hearts and the minds operating that big truck, and by the way, my hat goes off to truck drivers everywhere. Hugely demanding job, hugely complex. Chris gave a great presentation and lots of context there in terms of just the daily challenges. But, you know, the drivers' hearts and minds have to be engaged. And so when the company's trying to do that with, well, help the company do this, do that, help the company protect its vehicles, save money for the company, that falls on flat ears, deaf ears. Now, when you say, and you provide the program that really helps a driver understand what's in it for them and what's in it for their vehicles, what's in it for their pocketbooks, you're really engaging them. What's in it for me? Next slide, Trey. So we've earned a lot of green fleet PR across the country. We've had quite a bit of success with this behavioral psychology, which was discovered some 15 years ago and has been honed. And just with more and more engagement with fleet operators and individual vehicle operators, we really have honed our message and our content, which is really hearts and mind driven. So novice to experienced drivers, 80% reduction sustained over 2 years. That was the first time 4 or 5 years ago when we took our content, which was classroom based, and went through all the science and the production to put this into a program that's now available online and on any web-enabled device. So you can have a driver taking the program in the cab of the truck, you know, obviously on any web-enabled device, and it's winning their hearts and minds right then and there. And in our first real-world example of testing how the program would work in that sort of scenario, an 80% reduction. So that's the type of buy-in that we get, and we know how to win the hearts and minds of drivers. And that's on the East Coast of the US, that's on the West Coast of the US, and places in between. So it's actually not a tough sell. It's not a tough sell at all. Drivers are looking for the context and the permission to change their old 60s idling beliefs and behaviors, which are pretty much driven by myths. Next slide, Trey. We're Go Green is pleased to announce that the first U.S. municipality to begin building an idle reduction culture is city of Raleigh, North Carolina. And so typically government fleet agency operations have very, very high rates of idle, and the payback for our program within those types of environments is going to be significant. So, but they're going to be saving a lot of fuel at home and at work. And it's all about cost reduction and then the associated cascade of costs that come behind, you know, shutting the vehicle off, shutting that power plant off when it should be off. The next slide, Trey. So our website is a wealth of information. We have case studies, free downloads, latest edition of Idle Free Guy Media. I've published quite a bit in the US, particularly automotive fleet, that sort of thing. And it's got a lot more information for you and what you need to know about winning the hearts and minds of your drivers to really engage them on idle. So if I was to leave this presentation with your to-dos and your call to action, that is, take a look at your idle data. Okay, so you've got, because of the ELD mandates and what have you, you've got a lot of data. We know we're swimming in data, but I'll tell you, it's really worth your while to take a look at that telematics data to see where your rate of idle is. So how much fuel are you burning at idle? And there's part of that, but nowhere near as much as you think, that needs to be burned for the comfort of the driver. Now, that includes for the driver at home. When they understand, oh my God, I've got 4 vehicles at home, they're going to save a lot of money. So, and a lot of downstream costs and exhaust pollution for people and their families that just can't handle it. And so that's pretty much my presentation. GoIdleFree.com, and you can also ask me a question anytime at info@goidlefree.com. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Ron, for your insight on how a change in thought process and knowing the impacts of idling can result in lower costs and also reduced pollution for our drivers. Jason, do we have any questions for Ron?
All right, so Ron, I know this is kind of a broad question, but I think, you know, in the context of what you've already been talking about, and this has to do with, you know, what's maybe more in control that they have control over, but what can be done about the high cost of diesel?
Absolutely. Well, you know, the hearts and minds of your vehicle operator are really important. I mean, let's face it. I guess the question I would ask rhetorically is, who has the most control of that vehicle operating universe? I mean, and as far as I know, we're not, you know, it's not self-driving vehicles everywhere yet. And that's going to be, you know, who knows? So really, it is the individual, you know, in the seat of the vehicle, behind the wheel. And when they believe and behave differently, that's a huge opportunity, because now you've got the operator of the vehicle who will determine how much diesel is going to be burned. And so if you really want to capture carbon, you want to capture cost reduction, that's your biggest opportunity. And so when drivers understand, you know, behind the wheel of that truck, what's in it for them, it's huge for them as well. You know, there's a lot of people, you've got 1 or 2 generations today who have been raised on the 3 idling myths. Idling is good, restart's bad, long warm-ups are needed, from the 60s. And we now have generations of drivers of vehicles in the US, including, I mean, and Canada, with personal, you know, F-150s, Silverados, you name it, that leave those vehicles on pretty much all the time when they're out and about. So that's a huge cost opportunity reduction for the vehicle operator at home. And so when they really start to understand, oh my God, really? Yeah. And this is going to impact downstream, you know, the most efficient use of that vehicle, their resale value. If you talk to anybody that's in life cycle management and you talk about idle management, it's critical, because over the course of, say, 10 years of high idle in a vehicle that shouldn't be idling anywhere near as much, it's grinding down that asset and it flattens the life cycle curve of that vehicle. So I know that's sort of a long-winded response, but it really determines a lot in terms of, you know, what is that operator behind the wheel thinking, believing, and behaving.
Yes, gotcha. Thank you. There is another question. Do you see owner-operators idling more than needed? Can you give some examples of idling behaviors for owner-operators that can be cut out? Sorry about that.
You know, that's really, I mean, each fleet operating condition is unique, as we know. There's a lot of similarities, absolutely, but a lot of this has to do with the operator of the vehicle. I mean, let's face it, it's generally a diesel powered power plant that we're talking about. So you know, one of the biggest opportunities is for the vehicle operator to understand how those diesel after treatment systems work, why it's best to idle as little as possible, understanding how diesel after treatment and everything else works for the most efficient, operation of the vehicle. And I'm going to give you a really good example. Diesel Emission Service, an affiliate of ours based in Redding, California. They're one of the top diesel emissions experts in the US, and they will tell you that you've really got to limit idle in today's diesels because of all of that extra wear and tear on the after treatment systems. It's huge. So I think the opportunity is for the owner operator to really engage the drivers at home with a program like this, but also to make sure that they're educating their end users on how that diesel works most efficiently and effectively with today's technology.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. Thanks so much, Ron.
You're welcome.
Okay, to close our webinar session today, we'll go ahead and have Anthony review our local updates with us. Anthony.
Oh, sorry about that. I didn't realize there's a few extra slides. Thank you, Trey. Thank you, Ron, Chris, everyone for joining us this afternoon. Just real quick, a few things. Smart Vendor Directory. Just get joined up with that. You can see local vendors of the SMART technology and promoted through the SMART program. It's free to join, free to use, just a really good resource, and we encourage everybody to look into that. And also to become a SMART vendor, which saves money in reducing truck emissions. To become a vendor, you can sell your SmartWay verified technology, provide a list of that to everybody that's looking that up in the directory, and see things that can be made available. And then there's the link that is included to complete it, to sign up as well, so you can be part of that directory and be a vendor as well. Also would like to go over real quick the DFW Clean Cities program. It's there to increase efficiency, reduce emissions from the transportation related field, and we partner with public and private fleets. Consumer initiatives and local governments are also involved in that, and community readiness initiatives as well. And there's also fleet support, more efficient, greener fleets. Always looking to do that for the things that were mentioned for air quality reasons as well. And there's also some training on there and resources, and plan for fleet transitions as well to cleaner fuels. What they do is they provide funding support, system navigation to there, and we also administer some funding, provide technical assistance there. We have a database that we maintain, and we also analyze all the new incoming data. There's always stuff flowing in, so we're always sort of rehashing that and making it more up to date. We do hold workshops and webinars, much like we're doing today. We have folks in the industry kind of give us their insight. We also obviously we do planning things. We have the alternative fuel corridors, zero emission vehicle infrastructure, and then also Texas EV charging plan. We also raise awareness about things that are going on and issues that matter to all of us, not only in our community, but there's things like National Drive Electric Week, which is a big deal, where all the folks that have electric vehicles will get together one time a year and kind of exchange ideas and see how many are in the region, and just kind of see how that grows, which is really kind of fun to see year over year, the amount of registered folks in the region with electric vehicles. It's really exploding, and I think we had to change venues because it was getting a little bigger. So that is the Clean Cities little overview. There's also the National Network of Clean City Coalitions. That kind of goes along with more of a national program. You can see here in the blue all the folks that have really adopted and are part of the coalition. It's designated by the DOE, Department of Energy, and they work with those folks at the ground level to advance affordable domestic and transportation fuels, energies, and more efficient ways of doing things. And so you can save money and reduce emissions, which is just always a good idea. And here's how to get involved. A few links as well. There's a Clean Cities website. You can see any upcoming events. There should be Drive Electric Week is right around the corner. I think it's next month. You can get signed up for the email blast, and or you can also become a sponsor as well. And Trey.
Great, thanks so much, Anthony. I'd like to say also thank you to our presenters and to all those who attended this session.